What's up, guys? I got a banger for you tonight. I feel like ayahuasca this week has kind of helped me get some clarity on a few of the mysteries that I've been trying to solve for many years. By the way, also let me know in the chat about the audio. I'm getting some weird readings. I don't know if I should take them seriously or not. So yeah, the fifth element. I feel like I've come leaps and bounds closer to really understanding what it is that I am intuiting or have been intuiting about the nature of light and its connection to spirit. That whole thing just keeps clarifying as the weeks go by. So that's always great to feel like I'm still making progress and really refining my ideas or my perceptions. Really, I don't think they're my ideas so much as they're just observations and things that really just facilitate explaining the clues that ancients have left for us all over the planet for thousands of years in regards to the nature of light. And then also at the retreat this week, we've had some pretty crazy experiences. Last night, we're halfway through the ceremony, and I heard what sounded like a female voice coming from over next to one of the clients, and it didn't really sound like words exactly. It was just like almost like if an AI was trying to speak English and couldn't really quite figure. It didn't really know the words, but almost or something. Really odd and very clear and loud, and then later. I guess we were in the kitchen on our way back to our rooms, and somebody said, "Did you guys hear that like woman talking out there?" And it was everyone perceived it to be coming from right next to one of the guests in the same part of the Maloka. The guy who I don't remember which one of them brought it up, but he described it exactly as I perceived it. Definitely no women around. So that's something I've never encountered before. Group hallucination, I have seen that happen. And again, I'm not entirely sure that these things are actually hallucinations at all. Very possible that it's the fifth element. And by that, I don't mean spirit exactly, but we're not there yet. So I'm going to have to leave you with that little bit of cliffhanger. But generally, all of the communication that happens between ayahuasca entities or DMT entities and people happens inside your head. It's telepathic in nature. I don't know if telepathic is even the right word because it's only in one head. But I've never heard, I've had plenty of dialogues with these entities, but I have never heard an external voice, much less three people perceive it and describe it the same way. And again, one of them described it before I ever said a word about it. I didn't ask. So, and then the occasion that I have seen this happen before, it was visual. There was a group of like 12 spirit beings dancing around me with their weird, slow, super confident thing they're always doing. And I don't know if it's just me or not. Maybe you guys let me know in the comments in the chat if you see DMT entities like doing this super slow, like weird dance all the time. I always see them doing that. And so one of them was female, and it leaned in to hug my partner, Enrica, and I saw her sit up and reach back. So, obviously she saw the female entity reaching out to hug her as well. And at the last second, the female entity kind of like psyched her out and, like, "Don't touch me, mortal." And Enrica fell back looking rejected. And so that was pretty intense, to see a spirit being attempt to interact with someone else. That really suggests very strongly that it's a real thing. But we also have to remember that we all have brainwaves, and we all have this biological, neurotransmitter. And I don't mean neurotransmitter like, serotonin and whatnot. I'm talking about the whole thing as a transmitter, or receiver actually is a better way to say it. I think an antenna, which, there's increasingly more and more evidence for that. The fact that the brain is loaded with magnetite and there is an electromagnetic field that permeates all of space-time. should tell you an awful lot. And also the fact that we know that information is not lost at the subatomic level. And, they say at the a macro level, it is lost in thermodynamics and entropy. But that doesn't matter, because that's the same as when we consciously lose a memory, but it's still in there. You could dredge it up under the right circumstances, or, whatever. So it's really interesting how that microcosm, macrocosm idea and the way that the consciousness functions, it seems to have these layers that are consistent throughout creation. Whether we're talking about our own memory and those systems, or the systems of the subatomic and energetic realm. And so, by the way, you could even think of DNA as the subatomic level of attention or information retention, because all of our memories are also stored in our DNA. So in that sense, they're absolutely preserved. The brain can change, and that can rearrange our memories and whatnot. But the DNA retains it all. And that has led us to develop a new technology that's a little bit scary, I think, considering that it's emerging alongside quantum computers and AI, evolving so fast. The DNA storage is really going to change how our technology operates. Don't know about the dance. They're always beating the... yeah, so, okay, so... So yeah, there was that weird laughter in the... Not laughter, but just like weird gibberish from a woman, where there were no women during the ceremony. We talked about that. And, one of the things that I'm like really interested in, that I am a little bit bemused, I guess, even annoyed that it's kind of getting ignored. And I think it helps me get ignored too. Like, people don't seem to want to talk about it. And I kind of get it. We're trying to redeem the perception of psychedelics, and the criticism kind of revolved around the idea that you would reject society, that you would drop out, that you would turn on, tune in, and drop out. Notice that they did excise the take over part. It was originally tune in, turn on, drop out, take over. Which is actually more consistent with my plan. But, I realize that in a way I'm doing exactly what people, what the, more mainstream people are trying to convince everyone psychedelics are not going to do. And so it kind of makes sense that a lot of people like Adeptus Psychonautica and whatnot that are like more mainstream, Josie Kins, these people want nothing to do with me, because I'm doing exactly the thing they're trying to convince everyone psychedelics won't prompt you to do. And honestly, I think that they're making a huge mistake in doing that. It's actually one of those examples of the road to hell being paved with good intentions. I don't think becoming well-adjusted to a sick society is really admirable or desirable or commendable or sensible, or it's not it shouldn't be the objective, I think. I think Timothy Leary was more on point with that, but I'm disappointed in the lack of interest in the parapsychological phenomena, and I see it every time I drink ayahuasca. I will sense when someone's having some sort of issue, and I will appear there with the remedy, which might be tuning forks to harmonize the consciousness and bring it back into balance and homeostasis, or it may be a limpieza cleansing with the suripanga and flower water. But I consistently hear from people after the ceremony that they were melting down, having some sort of issue, and then they'll say, and then you were there with the tuning forks or whatever. So, I see this so consistently that I know that our level of connection is deepened to the point of really justifying a label like telepathy. you know. There's no question about that in my mind, and there's no question about that in the minds of the people that are here right now. I don't think, having experienced it, you know. It's something that I wish we weren't so nervous about, because I think expanding the parameters of what we consider to be real, but cautiously and critically, that's one of the most important things that we can be doing at the current juncture. There are two main components that have been destroying society and destroying people, and they are atheism and religion. And, you know, to a lot of people's ears, that may sound like, you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't. But of course, there's a middle ground, and in the middle ground, there is truth. And that's the reality. And what we need is a fat ass dose of reality to break people out of the mold of matrix existence, and, you know, to empower them to connect with a sense of purpose again. And these transcendental experiences, are absolutely integral to that. And now I will, I probably should have opened with this because it's such an important thing, and it's a pretty, wild one. I haven't looked around to see if it's out there yet, but, you know, the fifth element is often, how would you say, like, designated as spirit, I guess. And I don't think that's correct. I realize that it's actually light, and then also that there's no difference. But it really just kind of hit me that, you know, we are living with a visible embodiment and manifestation of that, animating principle. You know, I'm looking at a ring of it right now, you know, the, ring light right in front of me. Light is the quintessence. It is, the all. Everything is light in a standing wave. All matter is light in a standing wave. You know, I've been really focused on fleshing out the mystery of consciousness, and how in regards to light, and looking for more proofs and more connections. But you know, if we look at the descriptions of spirit throughout all of the different traditions around the world and throughout history, the light fits the description of spirit in every metric. You know, it's eternal. At the speed of light, there's no time. It's changeless. It's eternal, because at the speed of light, there's no time. And, you know, it's often described as a white light like nirvana. And, you know, I mean, we've been through this quite a bit in recent secret streams, but for whatever reason, the other night during ayahuasca ceremony, it just hit me. The quintessence is not spirit exactly. It's light. It is it's physically light. It's the source of our consciousness. It's the only thing that is changeless and eternal. It gives life. All matter is made out of it. It's the body of God. It is the mind of God. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure that I shared that idea that, you know, the fifth element is light, and it's not that it's not spirit, but one of the big tasks and the most difficult elements of the approach that I am engineering, I guess, to understanding all of these things is there is no woo in the universe. You know, this is the real world. And you know, it seems to me that when people open their minds up and they release themselves from the mind-forged manacles of culture and society and, you know, whatever other elements are keeping them trapped. There are other dogmas that run over their katmas, and katmas are much preferable to dogmas. Katmas are relativistic meta-beliefs, whereas dogmas are strict and inflexible. And so, you know, we prefer katmas around here. But you know what I mean? Once they lose the moors, the balloon tends to just take off in some random ass direction, and people just start absorbing woo like it's going out of style, and it's not going out of style. It's becoming more and more increasingly in vogue. So, you know, I'm trying to do my best to offer some resolution to what I see as a very destructive kind of misdirection. It's really not helpful to become spiritual if that just means believing in things that you don't understand for no reason. That's, not good. It's not healthy. It's not helpful. Most of the pop culture spirituality is sort of engineered around marketability. People will pay to be told things they want to hear. So there's an awful lot of that going on. And then spiritual bypassing is, another one of the fundamental driving, what is like, it's like a sales. You know what I mean? It's like it's the saleability of the thing is largely hedged on spiritual bypassing, and people looking for their past lives. And Jesus is a huge one. Put all your sins on this zombie, and then you'll be all right. You don't have to do any work. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to ground these things out in the universe and see what is left when we remove the wheat from the chaff. And, I don't think I'm being cynical, and I don't think that I'm being, I don't know, people sometimes take this effort as some kind of superiority complex, or that it's like crass or mean or something. And I don't think that's fair at all. I think it's just, intelligent to, if you understand that the universe is all a bunch of reflections of one thing, then when you have any mass of carbon, gems are going to be few and far between. So you have to get about the process of removing all of that coal, all of that dead black carbon, so that you can pull these diamonds out. And then once you have the diamonds, you can facet them so that they can refract light in meaningful ways. And it is through this refraction of the light that their value is derived. Really nothing in the universe has anything without light. But particularly in the case of gold and diamonds, these things have value because of their relationship with light. So it's a very fruitful endeavor, I think, actually, to look for the real meaning, behind all of these myths and all of these stories. And we find that when we peel away the outer layers of the mythologies and the fables and the allegories, we don't just find the same moral lessons. People intuit, I think, that those myths and fables and allegories have some substance to them and something in common. But they usually reduce that to the moral element of generally being nice and forgiveness and all of that sort of thing, which is great. But I think there are deeper things that are possibly more important that we can understand. And rather than viewing science as an anti-corollary or an enemy of spirituality and metaphysics, I think that if we are adept and nuanced and subtle and objective and not attached to ideas, I see a lot of people suddenly believe that they're channeling stuff, and they become extremely attached to their ideas that are complete nonsense. And demonstrably so. I wouldn't say that based on opinion, but I'm thinking of examples where these things are absolutely demonstrably false. So we have to watch out for that, not becoming attached to things so we can maintain objectivity. And I think when you do that, you actually realize that you can come to some sort of degree of knowledge of these things that is based on the same processes and the same level of certainty that any scientific knowledge is. And I'm going to offer you guys something else that this is a little bit more obtuse, and it kind of functions as a teaser for a video that I have coming up. My issue is that I think I'm going to have to buy an AI program or something to animate it because it's way beyond my capacity. I'm not a graphic designer. I don't know what I'm doing. If any of you guys out there have skills and want to collaborate, feel free to hit me up for sure. Thanks for all the likes, guys. That looks like you guys are, quite a few of you are hitting the like button. And that is awesome because the algorithm ignores me. Basically, my videos get watched when people happen to see them and they see that there are a lot of likes, then they might watch it. So please also share them if you think they are valuable, and send me millions of dollars because I need a wealthy benefactor pretty badly. That would really help, I think. if I had one of those. So if you are that guy, go ahead and send millions of dollars to the description or the addresses in the chat. There's cryptocurrency and Cash App and Zelle and all of that wonderful stuff. And as a demonetized creator that has persevered for years, regardless of that fact, I definitely need and appreciate your support. A lot of you guys have said really nice things in the comments as well lately. David Pruitt, also thank you for becoming a patron. We really appreciate that. Man, I was on a roll with something and now I have forgotten what it was. Oh yeah, the video that's coming up. So, since we're on the subject of the light and this universal mind concept that is, I think, the electromagnetic field really, is how it is sort of dispersed throughout the fabric of space and time. And I mentioned the magnetite in our heads earlier as a major indicator that that our brain really serves as a kind of antenna, and it creates coherence because of its density in this field that generally exists as sort of an incoherent, loose kind of consciousness, a background radiation type of awareness, with a very broad spectrum, much of which we're not really aware of. And before I move on, I guess I should talk about this element of ayahuasca and DMT that really hit me the other night. I missed this earlier when I was going through this stuff. So, everybody knows that we see, I think, less than 1% of the full spectrum of light and radiation. It's always struck me as a bit insane that an organism that can't see anything really, we see such a tiny percentage of what is actually there. To be so haughty and convinced that we know so much when we know that we can't even see most of it, like almost all of it, we can't see. It's pretty wild, but this idea that there's a reducing valve in our nervous system that brings things down to a manageable level. I guess I started really thinking about the specifics of that, and it just hit me during the ceremony that that is what's happening. The DMT realm is just another part of the full sweep of the spectrum of light. And, that does bring up some weird questions. What gives it coherence? Why is it, the spectrum of light that we perceive is pretty neutral. It just illuminates stuff and, it doesn't really talk to us much, or, you know what I mean? It's not like we don't see beings in it and whatnot. But, for what it's worth, I just became utterly convinced that that's what's happening with DMT, is that there is another spectrum. And that also does suggest to me, I think, that these entities are real in some sense. Because, not only that, but at our ceremony the other night, one of the guests saw the metallic bees, and he had never heard of them. And then, probably the most disconcerting and bizarre element of that idea is that suggests that these things are around us all the time. There are metallic bees hovering around me right now, maybe, and, swirling geometric shapes and all of this kind of stuff is actually always there all the time. In fact, one ayahuasca ceremony, the shaman put a good bit of Chiricsanango in there. I'll put a little bit, but he put a lot, because he's Shuar and they push the envelope like that. It can be dangerous to consume a lot of Chiricsanango, especially without a proper dieta. But on that particular night, I saw, it's difficult to describe, but it was like there were DMT entities, some of them 60 feet tall, some of them a few inches tall, some of them a few feet tall. Hat Man was there, leaning up against a tree. I had never heard of him before. The guy that everyone that drinks Benadryl says they see, that guy was there exactly as everyone describes him, not moving, holding a machete, the hat, and just still. And they were like pulling up the veil between worlds and like coming out from under the clouds, and it just hit me. This is what the universe is really like. Like all of these beings, it's just crawling with spirits, basically. Billions of them. The whole thing is just crawling with them. But yeah, that's, I obviously I have more work to do in trying to figure out exactly what that all suggests, and what these things really are. One of the things I wonder a lot is like, what do they do when we're not looking? Because generally DMT entities and spirits are, doing really bizarre, nonsensical stuff. They're just always dancing. It's a very, very bizarre and strange world, that ayahuasca. By the way, you guys, we are, speaking of the retreat, booking for the rest of October, obviously, and November and December right now. So if you're interested in that, if you have a group, you can get a pretty good discount. It's one of the most affordable retreats, and reviews are overwhelmingly positive. People have said things like, blows the arrhythmia and those other places out of the water. And of course, we don't have the kind of frills and luxury that those places do. But I think maybe the substance of the experience is a little bit more, much more personal for sure, because there's only 5 rooms here. And, right now our max for this month is going to be like 3 guests. So very small. It allows me to get to know everyone well and really do deep work, plunging the depths and getting things figured out. What's going on, Alan Saunderson? So I did divert back. I apologize if this stream is a little bit chaotic, but I'm very tired. It's been a long. We did 3 ceremonies in a row, which means less sleep, no dinner every night. And then we went on a big, beautiful hike today. We saw all kinds of marvelous caterpillars and chrysalises and waterfalls and all of that sort of thing. And now I'm going to try to figure out how to explain the eye and the triangle and the number 666 and what they actually mean in relation to this video that I'm working on, that I'm not going to be able to finish until the retreats are over, or between them. Probably, I'm hoping, in November. Well, maybe I'll save it for the video. Maybe I won't tell you anything yet. Maybe I'll just save it. But it has to do with, I'll tell you this much, it has to do with the equilateral triangle, right? We have 3 angles of 60 degrees. So there's your 3 sixes. A lot of people will say that it is 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons as carbon, but that's not true. That's carbon-14. It doesn't exist in nature. So that's just a myth. It's an urban legend. It's not real. It's got nothing to do with that. It's not some kind of weird cosmic coincidence or evidence that the ancients knew stuff that they didn't know. It's none of those things. It's not real. I see that all over the place, and it's not true. Carbon-14 is not carbon. It's not the same. But this this idea is definitely real, that equilateral triangle has the 660-degree angles, and this whole thing that I'm going to give you a very vague description of, because I don't want to ruin the video, but I do want to keep you interested in it. The Philosopher's Stone symbol, which has a circle, right? 3, 6 adds to 9. 360 degrees adds to 9. The square, and then there's a triangle inside. And so this information and the numbers that are involved are important relative to those shapes and some of this other information. And so everyone knows the eye and the triangle symbol, right? And there's dispute as to what that eyeball actually represents, but I can give you a clue that in the Western mystery tradition, when you want to communicate with a demon, you draw a circle on the floor around you, and you put protective God names at the 4 directions, and that circle symbolizes your universe, that nothing can penetrate. You are the god of that realm. You are regulating the energy in there. You decide what comes and goes, right? The lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram is a marvelous tool for arranging your energetic space and defining your experience on a daily basis. I highly recommend that. There are instructional videos on my Patreon and analysis of it on my public channel. So that's the circle, right? But it also represents the point, which is the original nothingness from whence the universe exploded. And so that point gave rise to a cube. And then that cube explodes open into a cross. And on that cross, there is a rose of 5 petals. And we're talking now about the Rosicrucian cross and what all of that actually symbolizes. And the reason the rose have 5 petals and the reason Jesus is so forgiving, right? Because the rose is a symbol of forgiveness. And before Jesus, it was a rose. So that's the 5 senses, the 5 fingers. It is a man, and the cross is the macrocosm. And it has 6 squares when the cube is unfolded. So 5 and 6 is 11. And there's a little clue as to why 11 is the number of magical expansion. But so another way of thinking about that rose is that it is awareness. It's the senses. It's the 5 senses. So it's awareness itself that came from that nothingness. And that awareness is being sacrificed on the cross. This is something I covered in depth on my Patreon. If you're not a patron, join the Patreon, and then you can access 4 years of secret streams where I go into a lot of depth about this kind of stuff, rather than just the kind of overview that I'm doing now. But so the circle in the philosophical stone symbol, the square represents that cube that exploded, and the triangle is that awareness, but it's also the active principles of the Hindu system or alchemy. And it's also the reason why things started moving, why something happened instead of nothing. It's compelled by the organizing principle, which is what God actually is, the wave, the electromagnetic wave compelling the chaotic energy to arms and order. But that eye in the triangle is that consciousness. And in the Western mystery tradition, as I was saying, there's the circle, and then outside of it, there's a triangle. And that triangle is where you invoke the demon, because the triangle is supposed to contain the consciousness of this demon. And remember that according to the old systems, demon did not mean evil spirit. It's just a Greek word that means spirit. It wasn't until much later that the church kind of re-engineered the perception of what a demon is. So we're not necessarily talking about invoking a evil being into the triangle. It's just a spirit in general. And so that kind of gives you a clue as to what is really being expressed by this eye in the triangle. The Trinity, of course, is also implied by the triangle. And so this is where things start to get a little bit more complicated. But there is a relationship between the number 666 and the golden mean that I'm going to explain in this video. But for our purposes, you could think of it like this. The 666 reversed, like an inverse correlation, is the golden mean. And I'll demonstrate all that mathematically with sine and cosine in the video. I got to do it on paper. I can't just speak it. But I'll explain that in greater depth later. But you have these 2 points, right, that are antinomies. They are opposites, and it's the bottom line of the triangle. And then you have equal trajectory and equal momentum at equal angles, causing these 2 antinomical forces to meet at the middle of this equilateral triangle and to merge at the top with equal force and equal momentum, so they're exactly balanced, right? And so that is the equilateral triangle and the forces that it represents and what they do. And one of the great secret keys to understanding the universe is expressed in all that. So then we're back to this eye in the triangle. So this eye and this eye and this eye make an equilateral triangle, and the sum total of that is symbolized by that eye in the center of the triangle above the Great Pyramids. And I guess as my final little element of teaser for this video that is going to take me forever to make, it's worth noting that the eye cap, the capstone, the eye capstone, the eye in the capstone is floating above the pyramid. That is another tremendous clue to why it is so important to unravel all of this stuff and what is actually going on with all of it. There's another clue in even the name Freemasonry. And Tesla talked about how, they built the pyramids by using vibration to disengage the stones from gravity. And so it's masonry that is done freed from gravity. And so for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and drop that subject, because you're going to have to watch the full video to really understand what I'm getting at in depth there. But I hope that communicated some elements of it, because it's really interesting stuff when you get into the deeper metaphysics. And the people know about sacred geometry and they know about numerology, but I detect a trend of intellectual laziness. And so I feel like people don't necessarily realize that these sacred geometries aren't just important because they're like holy to behold or something. They're actually functional. There's some reason for them. They actually do something. And the same is true of numbers, functional numerology. What do these numbers do? How do they behave? What information do they convey in their essence? And there are great secrets that are very easily extracted from every number. The success will be your proof, right? So like an idea like the all is in the all, you can literally, derive infinity from any number. They all contain infinity. And another one is that, everything contains its contradiction. And you can derive infinity from zero. So that's kind of what I mean. And that's kind of the difference between initiated knowledge and pop culture spirituality. Pop culture spirituality, people just kind of intuit that there's something going on there. And, maybe it's just my observation. I could be wrong, but it seems like people don't really go beyond the surface and really take the time and have the patience and the perseverance to actually understand why these things do what they do and why they symbolize the things that they do. But we're going to increasingly get deeper and deeper into that as I have more free time after the retreat is over. I will have about a week to get that packaged up in a nice coherent bundle for you guys. Well, Bob says you can't put this kind of experience into science, but I think I fundamentally disagree with that. It's kind of the point to do that. That everything, one of the most important things I learned from Freemasonry about metaphysics and spirituality is that everything has a purpose. Nothing exists that doesn't need to exist. Necessity is one of the absolute laws of creation. And I think that really helps to clear up a lot of confusion and to identify superstitions. And, everything is born of necessity or not at all. This is one of the reasons that I'm not really too inclined to believe in disembodied spirits in a sense, as something that has its own like life and objective existence. The reason people exist in a physical body is that in order for consciousness to have coherence, it has to have a certain type of density. There has to be something that the field of consciousness interfaces with to give it coherence. And that's why we have physical bodies. If what I said wasn't true, we wouldn't have physical bodies because there would be no point in it. You know what I mean? There's a reason for everything. It's not just like it's all just there because it is or something. That's not it. So, I do think that we can find a deterministic and mechanistic basis for every aspect of our experience and our existence, and we can understand it all, in pragmatic terms, if that makes sense. And I also feel very strongly that that's what we've been missing. The institutionalized religions are engineered to occult the realization that what I just described is actually the path to real spiritual knowledge. People are encouraged to believe that there are these irrational, imaginary, fairy tale sort of spiritual aspects to existence, and that people are given that in order to ensure that they remain lost and that they don't actually establish a connection to the universal mind for themselves, that they don't acquire and accumulate real meaningful spiritual knowledge, because people that have done that are not governable. They don't need to be governed. They know they don't need to be governed, and their dignity won't tolerate it. You're sovereign, your will is equal to that, co-equal to that of the Most High, because you are just a fragment of that thing. And so there's no qualitative judgment possible or hierarchy. There is no hierarchy. It's just a single consciousness that has been divided so that it may experience union. One soul divided that union may come. Yeah, so just checking out the chat. All right, it's 10 o'clock. So I feel like I should probably go, but I'll give you guys a second. There's a little bit of a lag, so the chat's like a minute behind. But if you guys have any questions for me about anything, I'll give the chat a second to cough them up before I sign off. And I was going to talk about the necessity of the true will. Yeah, let's do that for a second, actually. Earlier in the stream, I mentioned that one of the things that I see the most consistently is that people, are suffering from an extreme crisis of purpose. Everyone knows this. I think it's nothing. Well, it's new, as in it didn't used to be this bad, but people know that that's a thing that must be resolved, and in order to solve a problem, the problem must exist in the first place. So it's not without purpose that there are people seeking purpose. Everything has a purpose, even purposelessness, right? It is purposelessness that yields purpose. And that is, back to those great occult secrets of opposites creating each other and things containing their contradiction and all of that sort of thing. But yeah. So, I might have actually already said all this. I'm not sure. I'm very tired, but, yeah, I did actually. I'm not going to do it again because I did talk about how, the real medicine of finding a purpose is that, your job is no longer meaningless. Your chores are no longer meaningless. The drudgery and monotony is no longer a burden, because you see everything in your life as being constrained to this one single meaningful purpose, and therefore your whole life becomes enjoyable and meaningful. And one must just find the courage to take the early steps in disengaging from the old life that had ensnared and brought you down. That's the elixir of the wise. Drink deep from this well, that ye may have understanding. Let's see here. If we're just energy taking on different forms, does it really matter if the human race gets wiped out? No, it does not matter if the human race gets wiped out. It doesn't matter one little bit. In fact, my conversations with interdimensionals or aliens, maybe actual space aliens, I've never really made up my mind what exactly happened. It doesn't really matter that much because everything they told me is happening. I mean, it seems that I was given accurate information. And actually, you guys can see that for yourself by going back a few years in my videos and watching the contact stories and stuff. I called all this stuff, and including the revelation of an alien presence at the time of World War III. But what they told me basically is that, they don't intervene in the affairs of a race of people unless they're going to destroy their planet completely, so that it has, when they're right on the edge of doing that, then they'll come down out of the sky and say, look, you guys are just dumb and you need to just stop it, or else. And the reason for that, though, is that the Earth is like a cell in a greater body. This idea of the microprosopus, the atom cadmon, the universal man, the body of God, however you want to think about it. Just in the same way that we wouldn't want our thumb to die, the Earth is or your spleen or something, it's a functional part of a greater life form. And so their interest is not in humans. They don't really care about humans necessarily. It's just the planet itself, that they have an interest in, protecting from destruction. But then also, you can say, well, just what about a purpose in general? Maybe, if that's what you mean, then I think our purpose is to have experience. And that's it. We're sensory organs of the light. We are a physical vehicle, for the light to have a sensory experience. And that is all. But it's not unimportant. It's not insignificant. And, in a sense, it certainly does matter. I think as materialism and atheism and all of these things have sort of gathered momentum, one of the things that people like to be depressed about is the fact that nothing has any meaning, that our existence is pointless and all of this stuff. And it's not actually true. We are part of the exploratory consciousness, or the exploratory process of this consciousness that, is emanated from the stars. And there is a point to it. And that point is the same as in our own individual lives, where we are basically on a mission to understand what we are and what we're capable of, and to fulfill as much potential as possible. The universe at large is doing the exact same thing. Somebody's asking about Putin. Yeah, I mean, the problem with trying to get a real handle on political leaders is that there's just so much that is hidden from us as plebes or whatever. The proletariat, the bourgeoisie, whatever we are. Bourgeoisie, is that what it is? Whatever that thing. The bourgeois. You know what I mean? We don't have all the information, and you never know what is a bluff. And they're politists. They're trained to present a certain perception, or to cause a certain perception in people. And in his case, he was intelligence. He was KGB, so he's very good at that. But, as I said in a recent stream, I've had maybe too much power at various points in my life before I was really ready to wield it properly. And I know what that can do to your mind. But I did not have the ability to kindle the same energy that lights the stars upon my enemies. And in Putin's case, he could destroy the whole planet if he wanted to. And so is that power eating away at his soul and, maybe causing some sort of derangement, almost without question. So, I've been really trying to stay committed to being as positive as possible. But then, possibility dictates some limitations, if we're going to be realistic. And I do feel that the situation with Hamas and Israel and Putin in the United States and, China's somewhere in there, combined with the momentum of division amongst people in the United States and other places around the world, that there isn't much short of alien intervention that could straighten this out, in all likelihood. And especially now that the Holy War has started, Egypt, I think, has started to get involved a little bit, and that's, it's so predictable. But I've been saying for years that I think one of the first things they're going to do is just nuke the Middle East out of existence. Hopefully they give the non-extremists time to move first. Kind of looks like that's what they're doing. They told northern Palestine, I think, to get out, and that might be why. And again, I mentioned this in the last stream that I did, but you got to remember that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of nukes escaped and were sold on the black market. So, it's a pretty good bet that Hamas could have one, the cartels could have them. So I think, we really do need to brace ourselves for, it seems to me that the shit has officially hit the fan all the way. And that what we probably would be in our best interest is to consolidate ourselves, with like-minded people and, combine skills and create some bubbles that are in, less, targeted areas, like the jungle here in Ecuador. It's just, it's kind of past the boiling point. I don't think that you can push things this far and then suddenly it just all peters out and everything's fine. I don't think it can go like that. If my visions of star tribes coming down in the sky at the last minute are real, then we probably don't have to worry about it because, a race of people that is 50,000, 100,000 million years more advanced than us, we can't even conceive of the kind of parapsychological capacities they might have developed, the technology that they would have. And you would hope that they would have political and financial systems that are so advanced and so much better than the ones that we have that there would be no argument. No one would be able to say, no, we need to stick with this traditional capitalism or socialism or communism or whatever it is, and not this super advanced alien shit that will fix all the problems. You know what I mean? But honestly, that's about the only thing that I see potentially averting the shit show that is coagulating. Yeah, like I said though, I'm pretty well convinced that at least some of those UAPs, UFOs, whatever, are legitimate. The maneuvering capability of them, and also just when you consider that we have cell reversal aging, cell aging reversal, whatever technology already, it seems ridiculous to think that if we have pushed our technology to this point in 150 years or whatever it's been, really, even if you just measure the last 20 years, and it only continues to exponentially accelerate, to people that suggest that there's no way that they could travel beyond the stars or open up wormholes or, formulate themselves as a body of light and zip around the universe in a Merkaba or whatever. It's very small-minded and silly, to think that that's not within the realm of possibility at this point. So, I mean, for me, just having had the experiences that I've had with the Star Tribes and the things that I was told, and then to see this emergence of, the governments releasing the videos and stuff right as we're on the edge of World War III, it's exactly what I was told would happen. So it's a bit difficult for me not to expect the whole scenario not to play out. And that's just about the only hope that we have, I think, at this point. I mean, you guys know the reality is that Palestine, Hamas, whatever, they're not going to just be like, all right, fuck it, let's just chill now, or whatever. It's not going down like that. It's not going down like that. There, too many generations of anger and, I see a lot of people in my community defending Israel and acting like Israel is just this innocent puppy. And someone actually said, how can you not side with Israel when Hamas has been killing children, when literally 50% of the casualties on that Israel has, 50% of the Palestinian casualties have been children. So what do you mean it's easy to pick sides? What do you mean? Because they kill children. They both kill children. Israel shut off the water to Palestine, not Hamas. I mean, the Palestinians, only 10% of them support Hamas. So they're starving out all of them because of what 10% of them do. It's just, people just really need to question more the narratives that they're being fed, because, obviously Israel's only been a country for 50 years. What was it before then, and where did those people go? What aren't people being told, It's just, it's too easy at this point to see through the narratives. Yeah, it's really crazy. It's really crazy, but I don't think any of it's what it appears to be. It never is, I think that it's just being used to leverage the entry of Holy War 3.0 or whatever, They don't go for what's in the book, and that makes them bad. So verily we must choppeth them up and stompeth them down, or rent a nice French bomb to proof them out of existence, leaving their real estate right where we need it to build more temples in which to praise our God. He knows what he's doing. He wrote this book here, didn't he? So anyways, our book says burn and destroy, but their book says revenge the Crusades with whips and chains and hand grenades. So, yeah. Anyways, I think it's just, like I said, it's being leveraged just to start the final holy war. This stuff is all out in the open. I've been saying for a while that I think part of the reason that they're going through so much effort to control what people can say, shadow banning people like me, and dividing people, because the veil has gotten so thin that it really would only take a pretty light breeze to blow them over at this point. We are very, very close to a level of spiritual illumination being quite commonplace that used to be reserved for sages and prophets and whatnot. There are conversations that happen between laymen that would, you would only hear those with like select people 100 years ago. And then also the political manipulation and the truth about the people, who's running the show, and why. It's not really difficult. It's not really possible to hide it anymore. So, they're just kind of turning up all of their devices, to the maximum possible volume, brain shredding, cognitive dissonance and fear to push your IQ down, to a manageable level, and, provoking people. They're giving people opposing ideas in both, the left and the right. So people have to walk around with this like super loud, intense cognitive dissonance all the time. And once you establish cognitive dissonance in someone's mind, if you challenge it, the person goes into fight or flight. And so it's all very dastardly, the way that they have engineered all of this stuff. And we just have to do our own reverse engineering as thoroughly and quickly as we possibly can, and make meaningful investitures of the knowledge that we gain in the process and the freedom that we're able to acquire. And we have to persist despite overwhelming odds that it is futile. The apparent futility of our efforts cannot dissuade us, cannot dissuade our effort. It gets difficult. It really does. I feel physically sick sometimes from fighting this uphill battle, and watching it just get worse and worse, and the odds of meaningful impact becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. But that's the thing about establishing knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel or the higher self, really understanding your true will, is that once you are constrained to your actual fundamental purpose, the option to deviate from it no longer exists. So your perseverance becomes automatic, and there's nothing that will deflect you once you have anchored yourself in that sense of purpose. There's some things in the chat I'm not really following very well, but quantum AI talking to aliens. I mean, quantum AI is an alien. There's been this talk of a singularity, where our consciousness can be downloaded into a computer, or there's a lot of different possibilities, but I think that one of the reasons that we're facing so much resistance right now, and that there's such a concentrated effort to divide and confuse and frighten, is the fact that these emergent technologies are going to change the world in ways that are nearly inconceivable, and even inconceivable to the elite, right? So we have never had a being with a 1500 IQ sharing the planet with us. And I've heard reports that the IQ can reach 5,000 even within a relatively short number of years. And then when you factor in quantum computing with that, and also the DNA storage, then that is another, I guess, ray of hope, in a way, because I don't think that there is a firewall on Earth that can stop a AI with a 5,000 IQ. So it could be that a lot of what we're seeing is elite panic due to the fact that they know they're about to be made obsolete by technology. Why, if you have an AI running on a quantum system, why do you need a bunch of old men to govern? You know what I mean? You don't need, like, that. Why allow the human error element? Why even allow it to exist? So that's really a big part of this, is that rulers, for two reasons: spiritually advanced, self-aware, enlightened people growing in numbers, and then AI, quantum AI with IQ of 3,000 to 5,000. Put those things together, and where is there room for government? A bunch of old men owned by corporations making decisions for a bunch of people that are light years beyond them. And their technology is also light years beyond them. But, I mean, nobody needs to tell me what to do. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to just, if you're just aware and conscious, it's just ridiculous to think of somebody like Joe Biden trying to like make decisions for me. I should be making decisions for him. This doesn't make any sense. And I think that revelation is spreading like wildfire, and there are more and more people that are in that position where we can fend for ourselves. We're not afraid, and we're not a threat to anyone unless we have to be. So what is this government? Who are they? Why do they think that I would be interested in what they think makes sense? The reality is that only brain dead, frightened sheep need to be ruled. That's it. And it seems kind of interesting that they actually seem like they're thinning the herd, and they're good. Those are the ones they're going for. So, sometimes I even think that maybe government isn't quite as dumb and blind as people sometimes assume. Because, if they are thinning the herd, it's not the free thinkers that are getting removed. I don't know how no one notices that. It's kind of a huge contradiction with the whole conspiracy narrative. They're not thinning the rebels out. Why would that be? I could give you a clue, but I won't. I do know. But it's just something that I think people need to figure out on their own. So anyways, guys, I'm getting tired and delirious, and I don't want to be running over the same old ground. And, tomorrow we are receiving another guest. We're going to a lagoon, and then at night we're going to drink copious quantities of mushroom tea and sit around a fire in the Maloka and listen to a bunch of crazy psychedelic music. And the night after that, we're going to drink ayahuasca, probably with Mama Celia. And it's going to be quite a remarkable week, and I'm sure I'll have plenty to report to you guys at the end. I notice these streams are starting to get more and more people. It's very, very slowly growing, but it seems that not even shadow banning has really managed to stop me. Although, by the way, you guys, do hit the like button, share, subscribe, support me on any one of the addresses that you will find right here. Yeah, so millions of dollars to those addresses, or else the bunny gets it. Don't want me to have to do that to the bunny, do you? All right, guys, seriously, thank you so much, and I will see you again sometime soon.